wording that.
All right. So with the 12 subcommittees, this one is kind of unique because the Park and Rec Department already has a comprehensive plan that was finalized in 2017. I have another individual,
Oh, Sadie.
Sadie, can you hear?
Sadie, can you turn your mic on?
Oh, hello.
Do you want to quick introduce yourselves to the group?
Sure. I am just here to hang out and observe. But my name is Sadie. I am on the steering committee and I am also on the accessible government subcommittee. So I just wanted to hang out and listen.
Thank you so much. All right, so yeah, so because we already have a comprehensive plan for the Parks and Rec Department, the purpose of this subcommittee will essentially be to review those goals and objectives that are already listed in that plan and to go through them and determine if they need to be revised, they need to be changed, we need to add more, or if we need to make additional modifications. And then once we're done with that, that will go into the city comprehensive plan and essentially reaffirm that the comprehensive plan for Park and Rec is still what we want it to say, still has our correct vision and goals. So some of the other subcommittees are creating their goals and objectives, but we're kind of working from some already created framework and just essentially going to reaffirm those and talk through those.
So basically, it's a kind of an update from 2017 to 2020.
Exactly. So instead of creating a whole new section, we'll update the park rec plan, and then that will be referred to in the comprehensive plan overall. So we have some hard copies here for those in person, and then Alicia will be sharing her screen and we'll pull up the documents that we'll be talking about today. So we do have an agenda. So we kind of talked about the framework of what our review process will be. And then next we're going to go into the community engagement portion. So part of the comprehensive comp plan process was to collect community engagement responses. Alicia's going to pull those up in a second here.
Framework. So you will.
Yes. Perfect. And it's on the second page. So there was about 133 comments about parks and recreation, but the ones below were kind of pulled as kind of primary issues and ideas. So you received this intermeeting invitation, but we'll take a second to kind of look through this, review each one and maybe talk about what some common themes are, what kind of stands out as far as what people from Winona are looking for and kind of wanting and commenting on within the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay, so what's up there is not what's.
This is the Park Rec framework, please.
Oh,
There you go. Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. And it's under the ideas and issues category. So once you're kind of looking through those, if anybody has any comments, feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, so regarding so these issues and ideas, these are like considered representative of some of the like major themes out of all the comments received. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the stronger trail system, and under like a 1B, and also accessible and updated amenities. Really like sharing information, keeping things updated and high quality, and just a high level of maintenance, I think, is going to hit a lot of those goals. I know that's a lot of work, but yeah, I'm really behind those sorts of concepts, and also expanding the different ways to use Lake Park, like 3A. But these are good kind of general concepts, I think.
Yeah, so continued maintenance plans and preparation for that and updated.
I think it's a good point, especially in 3A, that they mentioned that like having options for winter. Not everyone goes snowshoeing or hiking in the winter. So I thought that that was interesting. I don't know exactly what that would look like. But I guess that's something good to keep in mind.
Yeah, a little bit like more weather protected stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had a couple of questions in regards to this. So if I'm tracking this right, these comments were more or less developed in terms of the comments that were procured back in 2007.
Close.
Yeah, even more recent.
Yep, so these comments came from the information collection for the city comprehensive plan. So that was done, I think, a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what, and so in seeking out the 133, what efforts were made to gather comments from groups that are not necessarily prone to comment? Where I'm going with this is I attended a city council meeting, sat, once I got into the actual room, when they talked about these things, Rex. And to me, that was the classic example of a whole lot of public input that I don't know is reflected in here or not. I mean, I'm kind of asking, because those are folks that if you put it out there and say, hey, please comment, we really like your point of view, it's going to range. So I'm wondering, what effort we need to kind of incorporate some of those lesser known views or harder to find views.
Yeah, Patrick, you're kind of involved in the beginning process. I know there was, of course, the online comment option, but as we know, that's not the most accessible opportunity for people. So maybe you can speak of some of the other options and methods they use.
Yeah, with the original comp plan, they had requested from different user groups. Basically, a handful of people got together, tried to name every type of outdoor user group, from playgrounds, parks, and sports, and trails, recreation centers, such as East Rec. They have all these different user groups come together. So they had little micro meetings similar to this, where people would talk again in the same manner. Like, how do you use the parks? What are the challenges you see in the parks? And then what are some suggestions that we can do to enhance those parks, specifically to marginalized groups. There has been a series of meetings at the Youth Center over the past period of years to collect information from kids and from adults. And it's been, it was heavy early on with the Park Rec comp plan. And now again, it's coming back up in other ways, especially in the community center conversation.
All right. I think, to the the things here specifically, I don't have a problem with any of them. I think they all are fairly representative. The things that I've heard, in just in conversation with, with my son and with, friends and neighbors and that kind of stuff as as I'm approaching gathering the information as I'm heading towards the city council thing. The two things that I think 3C maybe touches on it. I'm not sure. It says playground at the mall is so missed. I don't know which playground there was at the mall.
Me neither. I don't.
Oh, it was an indoor playground. It was awesome because you paid a membership fee for like the year, which makes it not accessible to everybody. Let's keep that in mind. And then the kids could like go there, hang out. There were tables on the side. Parents could sit, chat, and then that was accessible. It was air conditioned for the summer. It was heated for the winter. It was located, excuse me, it was located where the COVID state testing was.
Gotcha.
Oh,
So that was a private run entity. So
It was a private run entity, but if the city could replicate something like that, or we know that the East End Rec Center is a really important issue at this time, expanding that to have more opportunities for everybody, I guess.
No, I think it raises a good point in two aspects. One, I think it is nice to have something indoors year round. When my kids were young, they used to go to Rock Solid, and they put up with the scripture lesson just because it was a blast, and as a parent, when my kids were underage, I had to go there and spend Saturday morning so they could be there. But it was a wonderful experience, that has gone by the wayside. Sounds like it was somewhat replaced by this, but now that's gone by the wayside as well. So I think, larger cities, have something for youth indoors, and maybe the East End Rec Center is covering that already, but I think, emphasizing it and prioritizing it so that, kids got a positive place to go. Because if kids got a positive place to go and interact, they're a whole lot less likely to do things that aren't positive.
I think with the East End Rec Center, it's highly underfunded at this point, and it really should be a gem of the community because one, it is supervised a supervised play area. So a lot of the latchkey kids whose parents work 2 or 3 jobs end up hanging out there, or there's a lot of people with disabilities that go there with their mentors or supervisors. I think in all honesty, it isn't enough to really address the need in the community, but we can't lose it either.
Yeah, it's totally amazing what they've accomplished on a shoestring budget. And I can just, like, if we were to really throw a real budget to these folks and let them run with it, I think they could have a lot of specialty programming for like younger kids for exactly that, hot in the summer, cold in the winter type of thing that would take the place of that type of thing. Or if there were yet another space that was specific to those younger age groups, perhaps.
And addressing the generational, we had thrown a bunch of money at the Friendship Center. The Friendship Center had done a really ton of work to get a new space. I think intergenerational interaction is vital and should be looked into. There is a huge gap right now in Winona for kids between the ages of like 11 through high school. If the kids aren't in a sport or activity, there's just not a lot. If they're really young, they can go to the parks, but if they're older, there's just not programming for them.
That makes sense.
If that, we don't have a Boys and Girls Club that might address that. So it kind of ends up falling into the hands of the park and, like, what is the city of Winona doing for them? And not much at this point, but that doesn't mean that can't change. On the outdoor recreation playgrounds, well, being the mall is missed. Also, why is the city keep taking out community playgrounds?
Patrick, maybe you can talk a little bit about
Yeah,
what's going on.
That's a good question. The playgrounds, there are 14 playgrounds, and it's my understanding they were all mostly installed right around the same time. A good amount of years ago. And the issue of playgrounds comes down mostly to replacement costs on the playgrounds themselves. So 14 playgrounds 20 years ago cost $20,000-$30,000. Now we're looking at, to replace a similar size playground, you're looking at $200,000 to $300,000. The all-inclusive playground that the Lions Club fundraised for was just under $1 million. Just to give
Which is almost inclusive.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
They're just, I know they're really expensive. I have a child in a wheelchair, and if you look at the train park in La Crosse, they hit the mark a little bit better on all inclusivity than the all access park we created. There's room for improvement. There'd be some really easy changes, but it would cost money.
So the overarching theme for the playgrounds is it rings out really in other parts of the park system, whereas we install something, we also need to factor in a maintenance and a replacement plan. So take the hard courts, basketball courts, and tennis courts across town. So these courts, similar to playgrounds, have all went in roughly the same amount of time, and not a very dialed in replacement plan for them. So really all these courts across town should be getting resurfaced every 3 to 5 years. And we resurfaced a handful of courts in 2018. and there's cracks and they need to be redone. So some of, back to your original question, Amber, some of these playgrounds need to be reassessed for, you know, standards, ADA standards, safety standards, be brought up to current. In order to do that, we need a funding source for those.
Yeah, I couple other comments. One, I think, you know, by and large, I think the city and the rec, you know, within Winona does an amazing job of what resources, what meager resources they have. And I think you hit the nail on the head. The biggest issue, regardless of all of this, is the funding part. And that's probably a separate issue. But the two things that I would add to this, kind of similar to what Amber said, is that I think we, you know, the Lions Club Park is a wonderful facility and it's a great thing, but it's a destination park and you have to drive there. And so for the majority of people, because it's not a densely populated area that it's in Winona. And so, you know, I would wholeheartedly like to see other small, you know, some of the things that have been taken out, similar to, you know, where I live in Dakota and Lake Street. Those are things that were used every day, that by small families that could just, you know, they could stroll her up, the kids could go play for 25 minutes or an hour, the parents could sit at the picnic table, you know, or chill at the little shell there, or somebody could fish and somebody could do that. It was conducive to that intergenerational activity. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've watched, you know, a softball game go on before, you know, the field is now to the point where you can't really play there, but they still use it every single day. Parents with their kids come and practice, and that kind of stuff. But you would have, you know, big brother or big sister on the ball field with mom or dad, and then the little brother, little sister is over across the, you know, the thing at the park, because it's a place they can just run around and be, you know, kids. And I think we're missing those things. And it, you know, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It just has to be something for them to knock around on. So I'm not advocating for huge Lion Clubs type parks, you know, everywhere in the city. I realize that's just insanely expensive and you know, not possible. But I think that's something that we're really missing and is really lacking. So that would be a focal point, I think, that needs to really be emphasized. And the other thing that I would say is skate parks. My kid was one of those kids that lived at the East End Rec Center from second grade through sophomore year in high school. His friend group that's his friend group. Some of those kids have gone on to be pro skaters. It's not my thing at all. And I always kind of thought, oh, this is, you know, as a parent, I was looking at it going, you know, this feels a little sketchy, but I will say, having spent a fair amount of time, you know, observing and making sure things were good, those kids, it was a good place for them. It was positive. Those kids treated each other well. And you look at communities of like size, Winona is one of the only ones that does not have a skate park that's free and open to kids. Even Wabasha has one. And so, you know, I understand we have Anthem at West, you know, Rec, but that's $5 a pop. And for kids that are just knocking around for the summer, again, give them something positive to do, and that, you know, eliminates a lot of the negatives. Those kids don't have $5 a day to go there to skate. And so then they end up skating, you know, or trying to set things up. And in talking to it, I've seen it up in the cities where they do pop-up skate parks, where it takes a minimal amount of things to create a skate park. Basically, it just takes flat cement, and they will bring the boxes and the portable ramps and stuff like that. There was some attempt to do that with the area over as you cross the bridge to go up to St. Mary's. There's a little used tennis court over there. And so the kids approached the neighbors, said, hey, is anybody really using this? They said, nah. And so they brought over some of their stuff, and it was all impounded and taken away, you know, by the city, and they had to get it back. And I understand they didn't have the proper, things to use it. But when we think skate park, I know at Anthem, they have a plan right now to build a $200,000 skate park. That's a wonderful thing. It's similar to me to the Lions Club thing. You could have pop-up skate parks for $5,000 at 3 different locations in town, any place that had a lot, or like some of the cities do underneath the overpass. And then you've got then you've got a 9-month facility, right? All you do is stick it under the overpass, and you got a 9-month facility. You may not do it in the middle of January, but as long as it's, above freezing and not snowed on under there, they'll be there. And that, again, it's a positive thing. So that's probably the other comment that I got. So, thanks.
I think if you designate an area like under the underpass, I like that idea. Then you also don't have the issue of people just setting up where maybe somebody doesn't want them to be skating on their surfaces or things like that.
Like cat and mouse.
Is there any desire from the city to deter skaters from like, especially Levy Park? I know there's a group of skateboarders that skate Levy Park almost every day. Is there any desire to deter that?
Did you say, John, is there any desire to deter skating from downtown?
Oh, specifically Levy Park. I know that's like where most of them go. I just was interested if the city, cares about that or is interested in deterring that or not.
That's a great question. And Zach Craig, owner operator of Anthem, he says it best. He says the city designed the perfect downtown skate park when they built Levy.
You're right. They did.
But is it in the desire to have skating there? I would say no, from a public safety standpoint, just with skateboards zooming around and the waxing that goes on curbs and on the curbs and things like that. But a recreation department is very pro skateboarding, very pro skate parks. So, we concur with everything Jeff just said about having more pocket skate parks and amenities throughout town. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So,
Go ahead.
so I guess to summarize a little bit, so it kind of sounds like going back to that first point, that the idea of maintenance plans, not only for trails, but also for facilities and playgrounds is something that's really important. And then I think, Amber, you mentioned this a few times, but addressing accessibility, whether that be financial barriers or whether or not amenities are accessible to all people, and kind of doing that maybe on a more regular basis instead of just at the initial creation of it. And then I think also maybe the last part that we've all been talking about a little bit is the continued investment in existing recreation opportunities and spaces, and then investment in expanding those on some small or large scale across the community, so there's more opportunities for folks around the area.
Accessibility, so you can, things that you can walk to.
Okay.
I think that's the key, because a lot of these folks don't have the ability to drive somewhere or to load up the kids, or something that kids can actually get to on their own, ride a bike, that type of stuff. There's still kids that do that.
Well, and if you want to lump in accessibility, the year-round aspect, like, is there something accessible to do more than just the nice weather time?
I agree. And I think the last emphasis I would put is on, I think that age group, middle school age group, and they're hard. That's a tough one, because those kids, having raised two, that's an interesting year. Those are interesting years. But I think you're, not to go too far afield here, but I think you've seen a lot of troubles over at the middle school. And I think part and parcel of that is, again, giving kids an alternative. If there's not stuff for them to do left to their own devices, it usually doesn't end up well. So I think that's a particular focus. And again, that was an area that I think, again, not to overly tout Rock Solid, but they did a good job with middle school age kids and gave them a place to go and something fun to do. And, it was positive, regardless of your particular belief system. So I think somehow that could be improved or as a focal point of this as well.
I think, Amber, you kind of mentioned also like highlighting a key aspect of the East Rec is their supervision there, their staff and programming.
Right.
And you're kind of alluding to that too. So maybe that's another emphasis is.
I'd love to throw money there, like just throw all the money there. Because it really, if we have a solid foundation in community engagement, any problems that we are seeing are going to decline naturally, because a lot of our problems become because kids are bored, or there isn't anything to do, or there's nothing to do because it's not financially accessible to them. They can't drive there or whatnot. Yeah, so I mean, ideally, I'd throw money at the rec center and the friendship center and make it work. The library, like.
And I think a good example of it is I belong to the aquatic center for 25 years. Each summer I go over there and swim laps in the evening. Every time there's this gaggle of middle school kids, and it's hilarious, you know, because they're just goofballs, but they got a place to go.
Yeah.
And they're, you know, and every time I go, they're there, you know, because they hang out, you know, next to the lap swimming area in the diving well, you know, but it's, again,
Place to hang.
it's a place to hang out. It's a place to just be there and, you know, gawk at each other and be awkward and, you know, like everybody else was at that age. But it's positive and it's supervised,
Mhm.
you know.
Are there any comments that maybe aren't listed in this list, but anybody wants to kind of mention or has heard the community mentioning? Anything that maybe was missed or we haven't talked about yet?
I think the only thing that's not mentioned there was the skate park, skateboarding stuff.
Yeah.
And the small, you know, it's alluded to a little bit under that C, but I think the small parks, you know, or what, I don't know what the proper terminology is for them, but the small
Neighborhood parks.
yeah, neighborhood playgrounds,
Mhm.
you know, those two things are not on there.
But as you mentioned, it seems that it's highly a maintenance issue, funding issue.
Oh, yeah.
But there has to be resources. There has to be funding sources. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah, so I had a couple of notes that are things that just like are recurring things that I think about in outdoor rec, whether it's like park stuff, playground stuff, trails and things like that, like you know, things like just maintenance and like doing things well. And, you know, I know that, you know, when you don't have a budget, it's really easy to, you know, have Dave do some specialty work or whatever, but like that ends up not working well and it kind of looks bad ultimately. And so like, you know, I think, you know, part of why we're trying to do all the planning is to try and make Winona really stand up and hold its own regionally with its competitors. And I'm talking like, you know, like lacrosse, Red Wing, you know, those sorts of things. And if we do want to attract the people who are going to run Fastenal in the future and the wherever in the future, you know, these people are going to expect certain amenities like, you know, good bike lanes that are like actual bike lanes and things like that. And, you know, not just some paint on 7th Street where you have to stop every block, because that does not make bike travel even reasonable, right? It's just not feasible to stop every bike or every block on a bike. So like, and also, you know, just like fencing and things like that are, you know, poorly cobbled together, that, you know, or look sketchy, you know, like, you know, down on the levee, right? And, you know, I realize there's not a lot of budget, but like, if we could just do things really well and apply some effort to the maintenance and then like complete some of the other projects that we've already decided to do and, you know, are, you know, in various stages, like, you know, the trailhead for Sugarloaf and the ice park, like that really needs some work. And I know that there's, you know, stuff in the works to address that, but you know, it seems like it's, while we're waiting for that to wrap up and get implemented, all that dirt is eroding down into the Edina parking lot, right? And, you know, things like wayfinding, like how do people find when they're driving their car, the access to Sugarloaf or to Levy Park? A lot of places do, you know, signage to point people where they need to go. While also on trails or wherever, you know, signs, little markers that tell you where you're at on the trail and, you know, what trail you're on and what are the uses of that trail. Things like that, just these little details that I consider are finishing touches. A lot of times Winona doesn't quite get to them. And you know, posting all of that stuff like the trail maps online, I think that's one of the comments in this document we're looking at. that stuff should be really easy to find. And it should be at, you know, the kiosks and the parking areas and signage and like, you know, where there are trail maps. If that was professionally done, you know, like instead of plexiglass over paper that got wet the first time it rained. Yeah, and you know what I mean? Like, you know, spend the extra $150. You know, even if we have to, like, we might have to pay more as citizens to have quality stuff.
I have a thought when you were talking about actual maintenance, not the setup, but what about a program? We have so many groups like the High School National Honor Society and other groups that want to do volunteer projects. Why not engage the community to help with the maintenance? Obviously, if it's technical stuff, but if it's literally, we need to, you know, get some brute force behind it, there's got to be some groups that want to put in some hour to wheelbarrow dirt or pick stones off paths if that's something, you know, that needs to be done. I mean, there has to be, think of it like a Habitat for Humanity Parks and Recs edition. Like there has to be groups that want to help maintain. And the more we can get our community to invest their time, not just using the trails, but maintaining the trails or the facilities, then the more they're going to be used. It's like, oh, this is here. I helped restore this. I helped maintain this. We should check it out.
I think a couple of small thing, a large thing, small thing. I think it's, you know, one of the things that's happened with COVID is the expanded use of QR codes. It seems to make sense if you're going to have a sign that you have a QR code and then the map appears on the phone. You know, that would seem to be a relatively easy fix and then inexpensive because you're not hanging without maps. So that's the small thing. I think, you know, looking at Winona, I guess this is kind of a larger conceptual thing. I think, you know, we're blessed and cursed, or not cursed. We're blessed and challenged is the way to put it. We're blessed because one of the reasons I came to Winona 25 years ago was because of the amazing parks around the lake and the bluffs. And so we have unbelievable resources here, unlike most other cities our size. And that's the blessing. The challenge is we have unbelievable resources, and that creates an unbelievable need for maintenance and that kind of stuff. And so that's, you know, I think the key thing, I don't know if we're going to address that in this process, but that's something, and, you know, as I venture forth into the world of city council, that I see as a priority is developing the funding streams that are there, not as afterthoughts, not as if it all goes well or if we have a surplus, but that is just right there, just as same as police or fire or any other basic necessity within a community, so that you folks have a guaranteed funding stream so that the plan that everybody's spending time on can actually be implemented in a logical fashion, as opposed to piecemeal. Well, this year we got 100, next year, oh, we only got 20. It was a bad year, or the economy sank, or what have you. And obviously within city public services, there's always going to be variability. But I think you can go a long ways to eliminating some of that and have some steady things so that plans, you know, can be actually implemented. So that's kind of the two pieces there.
Yeah, so I guess the kind of thoughts that to summarize those is Eric and Amber and Jeff, the really intentional maintenance long-term plans. I think that was, you know, a really specific comment that was made in this process, but very intentional plans for maintenance, whether that's upfront costs to ensure longevity of certain services and projects, or whether that's pursuing specific funding sources that are more guaranteed instead of fluctuating from year to year to ensure certain services can be maintained in the long run.
Yeah, and so I had maybe a related question. Is anybody working, or do we have any relationships with, like, you know, the organizations in La Crosse, for example? I know that they've just done some amazing work over the last, you know, 6-ish years on trails and access and you know, and all the Upper Hickston and Granddad's areas. I think they've got some pretty cool. Now, I know they got, you know, pretty large grants from a couple local organizations there, but I think they had been doing quite well prior to those large grants. And do we have any relationships with those folks to like, steal their secrets. I mean, like a lot of times in outdoor rec, people are more than happy to help and say, hey, this is how we were able to manage this. Check out our game plan. This is what worked for us. Are those relationships there, or do we know these guys?
Since I'm dealing with the trails, yes, to answer your question, I've been talking to the lady who heads up she's kind of like my position in lacrosse. She's an outdoor recreation coordinator there. And so she is the city's representative. I haven't been talking too much to ORA, but I know Eric Barnard has, who's also on the subcommittee. And a couple other people know those.
He's
quite well.
sick.
Okay, yeah.
No, I think he's legit sick. I'm kidding.
Yeah, and then we did just quick information. We did just sign a service agreement with the Winona area mountain bikers to maintain Bluffside Park. So that did just happen as well. So things are moving. And then of course, Eric, you're part of Rec Alliance, so you know that Rec Alliance is in charge of maintaining Sugarloaf Park. So
Well, so yeah, what do you mean part of Rec Alliance? That's kind of it's a gray area.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about things that aren't listed or what things we want to circle back on before moving into kind of our next step?
I think the point that Eric was making about signage goes so far. Especially, the in-town signage kind of things where it's like points you towards the levee or points you towards, a park that you're near. I don't know if you had that on your list, but I think the signage part is really, really important.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that like and this is I think it's a Winona communication thing. I never experienced this before I moved here like 20ish years ago. Like, oh, well, yeah, what, you didn't know there was this resource? Oh, but everyone just knows. Everyone just knows. And it's just assumed that everyone knows, but I didn't know. I didn't know that was here. I didn't know you could do that. And there's probably still stuff I don't know about. And it's not an active secret. It's just not obvious. And who knows who else is struggling with that sort of just lack of awareness.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think that's a good point. I'm also not from Winona, so I've had that same experience, Eric, where I learned like, oh, we have that here. That's all right.
I think
Yeah.
that's just like a part of living in Winona is you slowly find out all the cool things that happen over time just through word of mouth.
Yeah, for like our Winona State students, I work at Winona State and I see a lot of these kids come in and they've just kind of figured out how cool Winona is when they graduate and leave. Because it's like a well-kept secret that there's actually cool stuff here.
I think that's actually very accurate.
Yeah.
I've been here for 5 years and I just finding some things and there's trailheads I don't know how to get to. I know they exist, I just don't know how to get there. If I actively sought it out, I could probably figure it out, but it's a little bit hidden.
But yeah, ideally anyone could wander into Winona and same day find themselves at a cool spot. Because it's just obvious, hey, there's a cool thing here, cool thing there, cool thing there. Go this way. Big arrows.
All right, I wanted to kind of go back to the first page of this framework. There are a few examples of topics and focus areas. Alicia, if you pull down the other page, and there were a few, we've talked about a lot of these actually with like signage and funding sources. But I just wanted to kind of review that list and see if anybody had any additional comments to add about things we maybe didn't explore as much.
I guess I don't really see listed on here how you engage the groups that exist. So like the mountain biking group, is there a hiking group? Is there like, I don't even know about, I know about the mountain biking group because of a friend of mine's kids mountain bike now. Is there a canoeing group? Is there a kayaking group? Is there a fishing group? Is there, I mean, there has to be, right? And we have all those things here, so like-minded
Cross-country
people.
skiing too.
Oh yeah, okay, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing. I know you can get snowshoes, but I don't necessarily want to snowshoe by myself.
Yeah,
So a resource to use.
A resource is one, do those groups already exist? If you do, how do you connect to them? And how are those groups connected to Parks and Recs? If they are sponsored by Parks and Recs, that's easier. If they're not, how is our relationship with them so that we can have that collaboration on what the needs are, what the accessibility is, how many people are using them, can they help us maintain them? I mean, the list goes, can they help us make it more accessible to more groups, more people? Is there a group out there that wants to teach middle school kids how to mountain bike, snowshoe, cross-country ski, skate?
Playing off of that, Amber, I think right now, unless it's associated with the public schools, it doesn't exist in a formal capacity. So,
Okay.
mountain bike, WHAM is the Winona Area Mountain Bikers. I've been associated with that group for 25 years. That is a very small knit, unorganized, group that basically centers out of the bike shop, and it's a core group of people that do wonderful stuff. Viable, they've been around for a long time, but there's not the Wednesday night rides and things like that to invite people in that there used to be. So right now you have the mountain biking team and, the kids and their parents who associate and be a part of that and through the high school, which is a wonderful thing. It's expanded mountain biking greatly. And for that niche, if you've got a kid, you can be a part of that as an adult or as a kid. Likewise with cross-country skiing, slightly less so, but it's kind of more of an alternative sport where you've got a group there that focuses around the kids. But for adults moving into this community, there is nothing. There is nothing for hiking. There is nothing for canoeing or kayaking. There is nothing for cycling or mountain biking, unless you, again, happen to know the right person and this, that, but there's nothing out there. And I think that's something that's a real missed opportunity, because most other cities of size, you could go online and sign up to show up at a trailhead at 10 o'clock and go on a hike and meet some other people. And I think it's something that perhaps, my degree in rec and resource management is 40 years old at this point, but it's something that I can see the city providing the catalyst, or perhaps Winona State through internships or what have you, providing the catalyst that then develops into its own thing. But somebody's got to start it. And so, and I can see a role where the city says, hey, we're going to do, get to know your trails. The city is going to sponsor, and have it just on the thing. Saturday morning hikes at 10 o'clock, and look for volunteers to lead that hike. Just starting at the parking lot on Garvin Heights up there, so that you don't got to walk all the way up, the bluff the first time. Things like that kind of get people started. I'm not sure how you go about that, but we're sorely lacking that catalyst, because I do believe that once you got it started, it would continue in some fashion. And maybe you start with you, it's just you and one other person shows up, but eventually it gets there. Because any other city you go to the cities, or I've got a buddy in Redmond, Oregon, and he says, yeah, I joined the mountain bike group. I joined the hiking group because he's new to town. He moved up from Sacramento, and they're there. And you immediately got a connection with anywhere from half a dozen to 20 other people, like-minded people that like to do that activity. And we don't have those things here. So it would do a lot to make things accessible and less of a hidden secret to newcomers and outsiders.
Is that part, could that be like, we have the adult leagues and they're quite popular. Can we have an adult league of hikers? I mean, adult league of kayakers, where you could sign up and it's like, I mean, you could have one lead person, right? You sign up to be in this biking where you bike once every Wednesday for an hour or something, or hike every Saturday morning. Just
think-
that people can go and they have a place to sign up so they know they're going to something, I guess.
That's not a bad idea to like try to group that in with the like league type things, like you say. And then I'm not exactly sure the if there's any framework around those leagues, or like what exactly is the infrastructure getting that information out there. But I'm sure there's at least something existing, like a catalog of the leagues that people can sign up for. Being able to have something like that you could just include these other groups in and not have to like start something from the ground up. I think that's a good point.
Well, I mean, if we have equipment available for rent from the lodge, right? Can they not be based out of there? Like, come to the lodge for your snowshoes on Thursdays.
So we need like a one-stop shop that connects the people to the resources and informs them of the whatever, the, you know, X, Y, or Z. So
Or
the
like
Wednesday night conference. But
the
you gotta-
information center, like, come to the hiking group. We're starting at the information center. Here's a trail map. Like, just a thought.
Or just meet at Holsinger Lodge, but I think your infrastructure costs would be minimal. I mean, because that
Yeah.
person to show up, and I agree, I mean, you know, come learn how to paddleboard. I don't know, maybe we already do that, you know, show up at Lake Lodge, you know, Saturday, fees are waived, you know, do it for an hour.
You can schedule a group paddle. And you can rent lots of equipment at Lake Lodge. So I mean, it would be great if that could be expanded to, you know, like the hub of all activity. But like, you know, things like, so I think part of the issue is that like a lot of the user groups, the people who are maintaining stuff, the people who are like making the little, you know, the actual groups, these are all little disparate little niche groups that are highly involved in their one niche specialty. And there's not like an overarching group that says, hey, here are all the things and here are all the whatever. There's the community, what is it? The community ed pamphlet that has like, you know, all sorts of workshops and classes and this and that and the other thing.
Okay.
And that's great. But I don't know, you have to like get that piece of paper. I don't even know. I'm sure it's online too. But even, you know, even if you, and I haven't tried it for a couple of years, but even if you wanted to like sign up for a thing through the community ed system, that web interface is torturously bad. Okay. No, I do a computer science. I have a CS degree. I can't handle such bad software. It is painful. And I think that I'm not the only one. You know, it's awful. Or I mean, it was. I don't know if it still is that bad.
Get your students to work on some new stuff.
Yeah, it sounds that easy, but the moment that they're done with that course, if there's not a way to pay them to finish that thing, or give them credit to finish that thing, and that's another thing. So like Winona State wants to be collaboration, innovation, blah, blah, blah. They don't have a mechanism to help incentivize the long-term completion of those collaborative and innovative projects. So, you know, like all the fancy building you want to build isn't going to make that happen if the students aren't getting credit because they have to go actually work. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I hate to be the guy that's like, oh, no way. But like, I'm just tired of starting projects and watching them die on the vine.
Honestly, making that catalog digital, I think should be a priority, or like it is digital, but like more accessible and like a better interface, like you say, I think should be important.
It's the Winona Public Schools, right? That does that community ed,
Yeah,
or is that
the art school today is the system that they're using. Is that right? Is it WAPS that manages that?
I think so. It always comes out in orange, so I assume it's WAPS.
Yeah.
Public schools, program. So the Park Rec will collaborate on services and program with community ed, but they are two separate things.
Okay. But like the idea that you could have this pamphlet or have this space interweb site where you could sign up at Parks and Recs for, hey, board snowshoeing 101, kayaking 101, basically.
Yeah, so
I mean,
finding a way to connect people to existing groups to kind of expand their access to certain services, and then also kind of finding a way to maybe in one place list all of those things that exist.
Exactly.
Some way so that people know what's out there and available to them.
I think class.
and that's how you're gonna draw in tourists too, right? Like if I know I can go to Winona and I can paddleboard and hike and skateboard and boat, I mean, like that's how we're gonna draw people in, right? We have all these great resources, but maybe they don't know how many more we have.
Mhm.
And I think in some cases, and again, I'm not entirely sure it's appropriate, but you need a catalyst. Because you have these little micro groups. I'm a part of a bunch of them. I've got a small group of guys that I can kayak with. I've got a small group of people that I can mountain bike with. I've got 3 different groups that I can road bike with. There's no coordination, amongst them all. If you're coming in from outside of town, you would know that any of those things exist. And similar to what they mentioned about taking students 4 years to figure it out, that's how long it takes to start making the connections to find people that do like-minded stuff. And so if we could offer that, it's kind of the chicken and the egg thing. I mean, if we could offer the catalyst to start it and a one-stop shop, hey, it wouldn't even have to be elaborate. It's just having it on the calendar and so that people could see it and start there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's naive, but that would
It's
seem
an
to be-
idea.
Yeah, it would seem to
Maybe
be.
more collaboration with Visit Winona would probably be the best.
It could be, yeah, and I'm very much at the beginning of this journey of understanding all the bits and pieces of city governments and services and what have you. And I've lived here for 25 years. I mean, it's the same thing, like we've all spoke of. There's nothing that gives the overall picture. It's all bits and pieces that until you personally discover them, you don't know.
And Visit Winona does maintain a calendar, but it's up to all those little disparate groups to like keep Visit Winona updated because they're not magic and they're not psychic.
I do want to respect everybody's time, and before we, if we want to keep talking a little bit, we can, but I wanted to set a next meeting date. Looking at probably 2 weeks out, which is August 26th, which is also a Friday. But before we set a date, is Friday at this time a good time for everyone?
I probably won't be able to make the 26th. I could make something earlier in that week, but obviously don't do things around me. But I'll probably be gone from the 26th through the 1st.
Okay. Is anybody else unavailable on Friday, the 26th? It works for everyone, so
She said it would do one of those doodle polls or whatever.
could,
Sorry.
let's ask the
Here.
committee, would you prefer a doodle poll? We can all select a new date, or would you prefer to keep this date and time 2 weeks out?
If we could do a poll, that would be great. I also cannot do the morning of the 26th.
Yep, we can do that. And we'll probably put it for that week, so then we still keep on this kind of 2-week timeline and can kind of keep
Sure, that's
our
fine.
meetings rolling, if that's all right. So yeah, we'll send that out later this afternoon so we can get a date set.
Sure.
And then our next meeting, so we'll review kind of the recording of this, and we'll take some of the themes and we'll put those together so you guys can review it, make sure that we're kind of understanding what the main kind of points are.
Sure.
And then in our next meeting, I think it'd be good to start going through that comprehensive plan, looking over the goals. We'll kind of go each goal, and then within each goal, there's a bunch of objectives. And we'll take a look at each of those objectives, make sure that they still make sense. If they're clear enough, if we need to add objectives, if we need to remove objectives, and we'll just start working through each of those goal categories. Does that sound all right to everyone?
Sounds great.
A quick question. I was reading something else. What document are you referring to?
So this is the Parks and Rec Comprehensive Plan. In that email where we sent out a doodle poll, I will send out just that section of what we'll be working on. That way you don't have to sort through the 2,000 pages and you have just those maybe 10 or so pages to kind of look at.
Perfect.
Well, thank you everybody so much for your time. It is 10 o'clock. If anybody wants to add anything more, or if we want to wrap it up, I really appreciate all the input that you've given today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, enjoy the weekend, everyone.
You too.
Thanks, guys.
Let's go do some recreation, folks.
There you go.